Grizzly bears are apex predators, whose strength, speed, and unpredictability make them some of the most feared animals in the wild. They can appear without warning, at campsites, fishing spots, or even in towns, turning ordinary moments into life or death struggles. Today, we're sharing 6 terrifying true stories of grizzly bear attacks on humans, from a police officer battling a 900-pound bear inside his station, to a Russian child's fatal encounter, and an Alaskan man's miraculous survival after a mauling. These first-hand accounts reveal the raw power and danger of these predators when they cross paths with people. The small town of Cedar Falls, Montana, nestled in the shadow of the Continental Divide, had always maintained an uneasy relationship with the wilderness that surrounded it. Founded in 1892 as a logging settlement, the town's population had dwindled to just over 800 residents by 2025. The local police station, a modest brick building constructed in the 1960s, sat at the edge of town where Main Street dissolved into forest trails. It had endured decades of harsh Montana winters, but nothing had prepared it for the events of the morning of July 10, 2025. Officer Marcus Daniels had drawn the graveyard shift that night, a routine assignment that typically involved little more than monitoring radio chatter and ensuring the station remained secure. At 34 years old, Daniels had served the Cedar Falls Police Department for 8 years, having transferred from Billings after growing tired of urban policing. He appreciated the quiet nature of small-town law enforcement, though he remained aware of the unique challenges that came with working on the edge of grizzly country. The evidence locker at the rear of the station had long been a source of concern among the department's 5 officers. Built as an afterthought during a 1980s renovation, the room lacked proper ventilation and climate control. More troubling was the department's habit of storing confiscated items there temporarily, including food and beverages seized during various investigations. Recent budget cuts had delayed planned improvements to the facility, leaving it vulnerable to exactly the kind of incident that would unfold that morning. At approximately 4:47 a.m., with dawn still more than an hour away, a massive grizzly bear crashed through the station's rear entrance. The animal, later estimated by wildlife officials to weigh nearly 900 pounds, had been drawn by the scent of improperly stored evidence. Among the items in the locker were several cases of beer, bags of snack foods, and camping supplies confiscated during a recent underage drinking citation. The combination of these odors had created an irresistible attraction for the hungry bear. Daniels first became aware of the intrusion when he heard the unmistakable sound of splintering wood and crashing metal from the back of the building. Initially assuming a person was attempting to break into the station, he grabbed his flashlight and service weapon before moving cautiously toward the rear corridor. The sounds grew louder as he approached, joined by aggressive huffing and grunting that sent a cold rush of adrenaline through him. When Daniels rounded the corner and shined his flashlight into the evidence room, he found himself face to face with the enormous grizzly. The bear had completely destroyed several evidence cabinets, scattering their contents across the floor as it searched for food. Claw marks gouged deep furrows into the metal lockers, and the animal's massive frame filled nearly the entire doorway. Daniels immediately recognized the extreme danger of the situation. His police training had covered wildlife encounters, emphasizing the importance of avoiding sudden movements when confronting large predators. He began backing away slowly, keeping the flashlight beam angled toward the ground to avoid appearing threatening. For several tense seconds, the bear seemed to ignore him, continuing to investigate the scattered evidence. The fragile standoff ended abruptly when Daniels accidentally kicked a piece of debris, creating a sharp metallic clang that echoed through the hallway. The grizzly's head snapped up, fixing its small dark eyes on him. The animal dropped to all fours and charged, covering the distance between them in mere seconds. Daniels tried to dodge by, throwing himself against the corridor wall, but the bear's massive paw caught him across the chest and shoulder. The force of the blow sent him crashing to the floor, his flashlight and radio skittering across the tiles. Pain radiated through his body as he fought to remain conscious, feeling the bear's hot breath and hearing its guttural growls just inches from his face. In desperation, Daniels reached for the pepper spray on his duty belt. His hands shook as he fumbled with the safety mechanism. Knowing he had only one chance to deploy it effectively, the bear loomed over him, ready for another swipe of its claws. Daniels managed to discharge the entire canister directly into the animal's face, filling the air with a cloud of burning aerosol that sent the grizzly into a frenzy of coughing and head shaking. The pepper spray bought him precious seconds. Struggling through the pain, Daniels retrieved his emergency radio and broadcast a call for backup. His voice was strained with urgency. and although his fellow officers initially found his report hard to believe, the sounds of chaos in the background made the reality clear. Meanwhile, the bear thrashed through the station in a panicked rage, overturning desks and shattering windows. Within minutes, officers Jennifer Hayes and Robert Chen arrived, accompanied by a volunteer firefighter who had heard the call over the scanner. The responders coordinated quickly, using air horns and metal objects to create a deafening barrage of noise. They shouted, banged, and clanged in unison, driving the confused and agitated bear toward an exit. The Grizzly finally burst through a shattered front window and disappeared into the darkness beyond the streetlights, leaving behind a scene of destruction. Daniels was transported to the regional hospital, where doctors treated him for deep claw marks across his chest and shoulder, along with severe bruising and minor internal injuries. His wounds required 23 stitches and several weeks of recovery, but he avoided permanent damage. In the aftermath, police departments across rural Montana reevaluated evidence storage procedures. Cedar Falls installed secure, wildlife-proof storage containers and reinforced building entrances within weeks. Daniels eventually returned to duty, though the encounter had permanently altered his view of small-town policing. He had always known the wilderness could be unpredictable, but facing 900 pounds of wild fury inside a police station left him with a deeper respect and wariness for the untamed world beyond the town's edge. The remote Arctic research station on Svalbard's eastern coast had been operating continuously since 1978, serving as a crucial outpost for climate monitoring and wildlife research in one of Earth's most unforgiving environments. Located approximately 800 miles from the North Pole, the station endured months of complete darkness during winter and faced constant challenges from shifting ice and extreme weather. The facility's survival depended entirely on regular supply drops, delivered by specialized Arctic helicopters capable of operating in temperatures that regularly dropped below -40 degrees Fahrenheit. Pilot Ingrid Sorensen had been flying supply missions to remote Arctic outposts for more than 12 years, having developed her expertise through Norway's military aviation program before transitioning to civilian operations. At 39 years old, she possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of Arctic flying conditions and had earned a reputation for completing missions other pilots considered too dangerous. Her modified helicopter, equipped with specialized cold weather gear and emergency survival equipment, had become a lifeline for research stations scattered across the polar archipelago. On March 15, 2019, Sorensen departed from the main Svalbard settlement carrying critical supplies for the research station, including food, medical equipment, and scientific instruments. The weather conditions appeared favorable by Arctic standards, with relatively clear skies and winds below 30 knots. However, ice conditions proved more challenging than anticipated, with recent temperature fluctuations creating unstable surfaces and hidden pressure ridges that made landing near the station impossible. After circling the area for nearly 20 minutes, Sorensen identified what appeared to be a stable ice flow, approximately half a mile from the research station. The surface looked solid enough to support both her helicopter and the supply transfer operation. She radioed the station to coordinate the pickup, advising the research team they would need to travel across the ice to collect their supplies due to landing limitations. The ice floe measured roughly 60 meters across and appeared to be several feet thick, based on its color and formation patterns. Sorensen executed a careful approach, hovering just above the surface while testing the ice's stability with her landing skids. Satisfied with the conditions, she settled the helicopter onto the frozen surface and began the delicate process of unloading supplies while keeping the rotors spinning for a quick departure if conditions worsened. The research team's snowmobile appeared in the distance as Sorensen worked methodically through her cargo manifest. She had successfully transferred approximately half the supplies when disaster struck without warning. A massive polar bear, perfectly camouflaged against the white ice and concealed within a network of pressure cracks, suddenly erupted from its hiding place less than 20 feet from where she stood. The bear had been stalking the area for hours, drawn by the unusual sounds and vibrations from the helicopter operation. Adult male polar bears in the region typically weighed between 900 and 1,200 pounds, making them among the largest land predators on Earth. This particular animal appeared to be at the upper end of that range, with massive shoulders and a scarred muzzle that suggested extensive experience in Arctic survival. Sorensen barely had time to register the bear's presence before it launched itself toward her with explosive speed. Despite their bulk, polar bears can reach speeds of 25 miles per hour across ice, making escape virtually impossible on such a slippery surface. She attempted to dodge toward her helicopter but lost her footing, falling hard onto her back just as the bear's massive paw swept through the space where she had been standing. The claws, each nearly 4 inches long and sharpened by constant use on ice, tore through her insulated flight suit as if it were paper. The fabric's multiple layers, designed to protect against extreme cold, provided minimal defense against the predator's natural weapons. Sorensen felt the claws rake across her legs, cutting through the insulation and drawing blood despite the thick material. In desperation, she grabbed one of the supply containers she had been unloading, a metal case containing emergency medical equipment. Using every ounce of her strength, she swung the heavy container directly into the bear's sensitive nose, causing the animal to recoil with a roar of pain and surprise. The impact bought her precious seconds to scramble backward toward the helicopter. Though the bear quickly recovered and prepared for another attack, her helicopter crew, consisting of co-pilot Lars Nacken and loadmaster Eric Haugen, had witnessed the incident from inside the aircraft. They immediately began firing flare guns through the open cargo door while shouting at maximum volume to confuse and intimidate the bear. The combination of bright flares and sudden noise created enough distraction for Sorensen to reach the helicopter's landing gear, though she remained dangerously exposed. The bear, disoriented by the chaos and apparently deciding the situation had become too unpredictable, began backing away from the helicopter while maintaining its threatening posture. After several tense minutes, the animal retreated across the ice toward a distant pressure ridge, occasionally glancing back but showing no immediate interest in renewing the confrontation. Sorensen was quickly pulled into the helicopter, where her crew administered first aid for the lacerations on her legs. Though painful and requiring prompt medical attention, her injuries were not life-threatening. The helicopter departed immediately for the main Svalbard medical facility, leaving the remaining supplies for a later recovery mission conducted under enhanced security protocols. The vast wilderness of Russia's Far East encompasses over 6 million square kilometers of largely untamed territory, stretching from the Ural Mountains to the Pacific Ocean. This region, sparsely populated and dominated by dense taiga forests, is home to one of the world's largest populations of brown bears. The Kamchatka Peninsula, in particular, harbors an estimated 20,000 of these massive predators, some weighing over 1,500 pounds and standing nearly 10 feet tall when upright. In August 2011, 12-year-old Anya Volkov and her 14-year-old brother Misha traveled from their home in Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky to spend 2 weeks with their uncle Dmitry, a geologist working in the remote interior. Dmitry operated a small research camp approximately 180 kilometers from the nearest settlement, studying mineral deposits in an area where few humans had ever ventured. The children's parents had agreed to the visit, believing it would provide educational value and strengthen family bonds. The research camp consisted of 3 prefabricated structures surrounded by equipment for core sampling and geological analysis. Dmitry had established the camp in a valley between 2 mountain ridges, providing a natural windbreak and access to a freshwater stream. The location also offered spectacular views of the surrounding wilderness, though it placed the camp directly in prime bear habitat during the salmon spawning season. On August 23, 2011, Dmitry departed in the early morning for a day-long survey expedition, leaving detailed instructions for the children to remain within sight of the camp. Anya and Misha, however, grew restless after several days of restricted movement and decided to explore a well-marked trail leading up the eastern ridge. The trail had been used by Dmitry for equipment transport and appeared safe for a short hiking excursion. The siblings packed water and snacks before setting out around 10 a.m., planning to reach a scenic overlook approximately 2 kilometers from camp. The weather conditions were ideal for hiking, with clear skies and temperatures near 15 degrees Celsius. The trail wound through dense birch and larch forest, offering occasional glimpses of the valley below and the distant volcanic peaks dominating the horizon. Approximately halfway to their destination, the children encountered a massive grizzly bear sleeping in a shallow depression beside the trail. The bear had excavated the resting spot near the base of a large larch tree, likely seeking cooler ground during the warm afternoon hours. Adult male grizzlies in the region typically weighed between 600 and 800 pounds, though some exceeded 1,000 pounds during peak feeding seasons. Anya, fascinated by wildlife photography since receiving a digital camera for her birthday, recognized the rare opportunity presented by the sleeping bear. Despite her brother's urgent and cautious gestures for her to stay back, she began moving closer to capture what she believed would be remarkable photographs. Misha remained on the trail, approximately 30 meters away, signaling frantically for her to return but avoiding loud noises that might wake the animal. The bear appeared to be in deep sleep, its massive chest rising and falling rhythmically in the afternoon shade. Anya managed to approach within 15 meters, close enough to capture detailed images of the animal's size and thick brown coat. She took several photographs before edging even closer for a more dramatic shot, ignoring Misha's increasingly urgent warnings. The bear awoke suddenly, possibly disturbed by the camera's electronic sounds or Anya's scent carried by shifting air currents. Adult grizzlies can transition from deep sleep to full alertness in seconds, and this animal demonstrated that ability with startling speed. Its small dark eyes locked onto Anya, who stood frozen with her camera raised, fully exposed in the open forest. The grizzly surged from its resting position and charged directly at her, covering the ground between them in less than 3 seconds. Despite their bulk, grizzlies can reach speeds of 35 miles per hour over short distances, making escape nearly impossible once an attack begins. Anya tried to run back toward the trail but had moved only a few steps before the bear's massive paw struck her across the back and shoulders. The impact knocked her to the ground, and the animal followed with additional swipes. Misha, watching in shock from the trail, remained rooted in place, overwhelmed by fear. The incident lasted roughly 30 seconds before the bear, apparently convinced the perceived threat had been eliminated, moved back toward its resting area. It showed no interest in Misha, who remained motionless until the animal disappeared into the dense forest. Only then did he approach his sister, finding injuries that she did not survive. Misha activated an emergency satellite communicator Dmitri had given them, transmitting GPS coordinates and requesting immediate rescue. The nearest emergency response team was based over 200 kilometers away, requiring helicopter transport to reach the location. They arrived approximately 4 hours later, but Anya had already passed away. The rescue team confirmed that the encounter had been a defensive reaction rather than predatory behavior, as shown by the bear's immediate withdrawal after neutralizing the perceived danger. Misha gave a detailed account of the events, information that proved valuable for wildlife authorities investigating the incident. The tragedy prompted enhanced safety protocols for research operations in the Russian Far East, including mandatory bear awareness training and improved emergency communication systems for remote camps. Misha required extensive counseling to address the psychological effects of witnessing his sister's loss, an experience that forever changed his view of the wilderness they had once been eager to explore. Kodiak Island, located in the Gulf of Alaska approximately 250 miles southwest of Anchorage, encompasses over 3,600 square miles of rugged wilderness, dominated by towering mountains, dense forests, and countless salmon-rich streams. The island is home to the world's largest brown bears, with adult males commonly exceeding 1,200 pounds and some exceptional specimens reaching more than 1,500 pounds. These massive predators, known as Kodiak bears, have evolved in isolation for thousands of years, developing into apex hunters perfectly adapted to their maritime environment. Captain Mike Thornburg had been commercial fishing in Alaskan waters for over 20 years, operating a 30-foot aluminum vessel built for salmon and halibut fishing in the challenging conditions around Kodiak Island. His crew consisted of seasoned deckhands who understood both the rewards and the risks of working in waters where enormous brown bears regularly scavenged along the shorelines. September typically marked the peak of salmon runs, creating ideal conditions for successful fishing, yet also increasing the likelihood of dangerous wildlife encounters. On September 12, 2016, Thornburg and his 3-person crew experienced one of their most productive days of the season while fishing off Kodiak's remote northwestern coast. Their holds contained nearly 800 pounds of fresh salmon, halibut, and rockfish, representing an exceptional single-day catch. As evening approached, they decided to anchor in a sheltered cove to clean and process their haul before making the long journey back to port. The cove appeared ideal for their purposes. It offered protection from ocean swells and featured a small gravel beach perfect for landing and fish cleaning operations. Steep, forested slopes enclosed the inlet on 3 sides, providing a natural windbreak and seclusion. The crew had used similar coves dozens of times without incident, though they were fully aware that bears often visited such places during salmon season. Deckhand Sarah Martinez, a 28-year-old fishing veteran, began filleting fish on a makeshift table fashioned from coolers and boards. Without warning, a massive Kodiak bear emerged from the tree line, moving with startling stealth despite its estimated weight of 1,300 pounds. Its pronounced shoulder hump and dish-shaped face clearly marked it as a mature male in peak condition. Drawn by the unmistakable scent of fresh fish blood and entrails, odors that can attract bears from several miles away, the animal had likely been shadowing the cove for some time. Commercial fishing operations often create powerful attractants for these predators, which may learn to associate boat activity with easily obtained food. This bear displayed no fear of humans, suggesting prior contact with similar situations. Thornburg instantly recognized the danger. The bear charged directly toward the fish cleaning station, knocking over barrels and scattering equipment with powerful swipes of its front paws. Sarah dropped her filleting knife and stumbled backward, nearly slipping into the water in her haste to avoid the animal's path. Though the bear's attention was fixed on the fish rather than the crew, its sheer size and strength made every movement perilous. The crew quickly realized they were trapped between the aggressive animal and the rocky shoreline, with their vessel anchored roughly 50 feet offshore. Attempting to swim in the frigid waters would have been certain death from hypothermia, and the bear blocked any escape route toward the higher ground of the forested slopes. Their only option was to climb onto the cabin roof of the vessel, which they reached by scrambling over fuel barrels and equipment containers. From their elevated position, the crew watched as the bear systematically destroyed their fish cleaning setup. The animal devoured entire salmon in single bites while searching for more food. It flipped sorting tables, scattered ice across the beach, and shredded equipment bags with its 4-inch claws. Its casual display of power was intimidating, as it easily moved objects weighing hundreds of pounds. Thornburg retrieved emergency flares from the boat's safety gear, hoping to drive the bear away with bright light and noise. He launched 3 flares toward the animal, each exploding in vivid red bursts. The bear briefly retreated a few steps, but soon returned to feeding, apparently deciding that the reward outweighed the discomfort. In response, Sarah began striking a large metal wrench against a fuel tank, producing sharp, echoing clangs that carried through the cove. The rest of the crew joined in, using whatever they could to create a deafening racket. The noise appeared to irritate the bear, which began pacing along the beach and emitting deep guttural growls that reverberated in their chests. For more than an hour, the tense standoff continued. The bear alternated between feeding on the remaining fish and prowling beneath their elevated refuge, its massive frame visible even in the dimming light. The animal's silver-tipped guard hairs shimmered against its dark brown coat, highlighting its age and maturity. Its head, broad and heavily muscled, appeared disproportionately large even for such a powerful body. As evening deepened into twilight, the bear's behavior shifted. Having eaten most of the accessible fish, it seemed to lose interest in the crew's noisy resistance. It lingered near the tree line for several moments, as if considering another approach, before turning and slipping silently back into the dense forest from which it had come. Even after the bear disappeared from sight, the crew waited an additional 30 minutes before climbing down. They moved cautiously, scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. Working quickly, they salvaged what remained of their catch and equipment before departing the cove. The encounter left its mark, both in the form of lost catch and in personal injury. During the scramble to reach the cabin roof, Thornburg had sustained multiple deep scratches on his forearms, the result of close proximity to the bear as it lunged toward the fish. Those injuries required professional medical care once they reached port. The experience reinforced a hard lesson for the crew. In Kodiak's wild, salmon-rich coves, humans and bears are often drawn to the same resources, and the margin for error is razor-thin. Even experienced fishers, equipped with knowledge, gear, and years on the water, can find themselves at the mercy of one of the world's most powerful predators. The wilderness area in northwestern Montana, where wildlife biologist Jenna Blackwood had established her research camp, represented some of the most pristine black bear habitat in North America. Located approximately 40 miles from the nearest road access, the remote valley contained dense mixed forests of lodgepole pine, Douglas fir, and aspen, providing ideal conditions for studying black bear behavior and population dynamics. The region supported an estimated density of 1 bear per square mile, among the highest concentrations documented in the continental United States. Jenna, a 31-year-old researcher with a regional university in Montana, had spent the previous 3 summers conducting field studies on black bear feeding patterns and territorial behavior. Her current project involved tracking radio-collared bears to document their daily movement patterns and food preferences throughout the summer months. The research required extended stays in remote locations, often camping for weeks at a time in areas where human presence was rare. On June 18, 2013, Jenna had established a temporary camp with 3 research colleagues in a meadow beside a clear mountain stream. approximately 12 miles from their base station. The location offered excellent visibility for radio tracking equipment, while providing access to fresh water and level ground for their tents. The camp consisted of 4 lightweight backpacking tents, a central cooking area, and equipment storage containers arranged in a rough circle around a fire pit. Her companions included graduate student Marcus Reed, research assistant Lisa Yamamoto, and visiting researcher Dr. Robert Chen from a Canadian university. The team had spent the previous week successfully tracking several bears through challenging terrain, gathering valuable data on foraging behavior and habitat preferences. Their work required detailed logs of bear sightings and behavioral observations while minimizing human impact on the environment. Despite their knowledge of bear country protocols, the research team made a critical error in food storage that would prove nearly disastrous. A cooler containing several days' worth of provisions had been left unsecured near their cooking area, rather than being stored in bear-resistant containers or suspended from tree branches. The cooler contained fresh meat, vegetables, and various canned goods, powerful attractants for any bears in the vicinity. During the early morning hours of June 19th, while the researchers slept in their tents, a mature black bear entered their campsite. Adult males in the region typically weighed between 300 and 400 pounds, though exceptional specimens exceeded 500 pounds during peak feeding seasons. This particular bear appeared at the upper end of that range, with the broad skull and massive shoulders characteristic of a dominant male. The bear's initial interest centered on the unsecured cooler, which it opened with casual efficiency using its claws and teeth. The contents offered a high-calorie reward that required no effort, reinforcing the bear's association between human campsites and easy feeding. The situation quickly escalated from opportunistic scavenging to aggressive territorial behavior. Jenna awoke to the sound of destruction outside her tent, initially assuming that a colleague was starting an early breakfast. The metallic clanging and heavy crashes were unusual for normal camp activities, and when she checked her watch, she saw that it was barely 4 a.m., well before their usual wake-up time. Looking out from her tent, she immediately recognized the danger. The large black bear had destroyed their cooking area and was tearing into equipment storage containers. Scattered food packaging covered the ground, and their organized research station had been reduced to chaos in minutes. Grabbing a flashlight and a metal camping pot, Jenna began making as much noise as possible to alert the others and deter the bear. She struck the pot with a metal spoon and raised her voice in an attempt to scare the animal away before anyone was harmed. The bear ignored her, continuing to destroy supplies. The noise woke the rest of the team, who emerged to find the camp in disarray. 2 tents had been torn open, with sleeping bags and personal gear scattered across the meadow. One of the research laptops had been crushed beneath the bear's paws, destroying weeks of collected data. Instead of retreating, the bear suddenly charged toward Jenna. Although smaller than grizzlies, black bears can reach speeds over 30 miles per hour and have formidable strength. The animal's behavior suggested it was defending what it now considered its food cache. Jenna attempted to move out of its path by diving behind a large boulder, but the bear's momentum brought it directly toward her. A powerful swipe from its forepaw struck her shoulder and upper back, knocking her to the ground with force. Its claws tore through her jacket, though fortunately not deeply enough to cause severe lacerations. In desperation, Jenna seized her hiking stick, a sturdy aluminum pole designed for mountaineering, and struck the bear across the nose. The impact caused the animal to recoil briefly, giving her enough time to scramble out of immediate reach. The bear recovered quickly, preparing to charge again. Marcus Reed moved to assist her, while Lisa Yamamoto and Dr. Chen worked to rapidly increase the campfire to a bright blaze. The combination of strong flames, loud human voices, and the coordinated actions of the group began to shift the bear's behavior. It hesitated, appearing uncertain, and eventually backed away from the immediate area. The standoff lasted several tense minutes before the bear retreated into the forest. It remained near the tree line for nearly an hour before vanishing completely. For the rest of the night, the team stayed close to the fire, assessing the damage and tending to Jenna's injuries, which included deep scratches across her shoulders and significant bruising from the blow. The encounter underscored the importance of strict food storage protocols, even for experienced researchers working in prime bear habitat. The remote bus station in Alaska's interior marked the final outpost of civilization before the true wilderness began, a lonely marker on the map that served travelers venturing into some of North America's most unforgiving and isolated territory. Located along the Richardson Highway, roughly 180 miles north of Fairbanks, the small shelter offered little more than the bare essentials: a wooden building weathered to a silvery gray by decades of snow and wind, a gravel parking area crusted with early ice, and a single wooden bench where passengers could wait for the twice-weekly bus service that connected northern settlements. The structure sat at the very edge of a vast boreal forest, stretching away for hundreds of miles in all directions, its dark spruce and fir trees concealing a population of some of Alaska's largest and most aggressive grizzly bears. The stillness there was absolute, broken only by the occasional groan of wind through the trees or the distant rumble of a passing truck on the highway. John Masterson, a 43-year-old mining equipment technician, had been traveling to a remote gold mining operation when mechanical issues forced the bus to make an unscheduled stop at the isolated station. Over the course of 2 hours, other passengers, mostly men bound for mining and logging jobs, had been picked up by company vehicles. John remained alone, watching the sky darken while he waited for his employer's truck, which had been delayed by severe weather farther north. The place felt emptier with each passing minute, and the cold seemed to creep in from the surrounding forest. October weather in Alaska's interior could be mercilessly unpredictable. In a single day, temperatures could swing from just above freezing in the brief daylight to well below zero after sunset. On October 15, 2017, an early winter storm had moved through the region, dumping several inches of wet snow that quickly compacted and froze into a treacherous sheet of ice. The storm disrupted transportation schedules throughout the region, leaving John stranded as the late afternoon light faded toward the long Arctic night. The cold bit at his cheeks and numbed his fingertips even through his gloves, each breath forming a cloud in the dimming air. The forest surrounding the station was home to an estimated 1 grizzly bear per 4 square miles. Many of them reached extraordinary size thanks to rich salmon runs in summer and dense berry crops in autumn. Late October marked a critical stage in their annual cycle, the final weeks before hibernation when they became single-minded in their pursuit of calories. Hunger drove them to be bold, sometimes dangerously so, and to react aggressively to any perceived interference. Large males could weigh between 800 and 1,200 pounds in this period, though the largest individuals exceeded even that staggering mass. At approximately 6:30 p.m., as twilight thickened into the blue-gray shadow of evening, movement in the trees caught John's attention. From the dense spruce on the far side of the parking area, an enormous grizzly bear emerged. It paused at the tree line, its massive head swaying slightly as it sniffed the air. The animal's sheer size was breathtaking, later estimated by wildlife officials at roughly 1,500 pounds, placing it among the largest ever recorded in Alaska. Snow clung to the thick fur along its back, and its breath steamed in the frigid air. The bear appeared to be following scent trails, perhaps drawn by lingering traces of food scraps or garbage left by past travelers. Even at a distance of 200 yards, John could see the raw power in its shoulders and the fluid precision of its movement. The animal's approach was unnervingly quiet for its bulk, the only sound the occasional crunch of ice beneath its paws. Alone, unarmed and far from help, John instantly understood the severity of his predicament. The nearest settlement lay more than 50 miles away, and the spotty radio coverage in the surrounding mountains meant he could not rely on calling for assistance. At first, the bear's movement suggested only curiosity as it investigated the perimeter of the bus station, but when it caught John's scent directly, something in its body language shifted. The casual swaying of its head ceased, its gaze fixed on him with unblinking intensity. In the pre-hibernation period, male grizzlies were known to treat anything near a food source, real or imagined, as competition, and to respond with sudden explosive aggression. Without warning, the animal dropped its head and charged. A bear of that size could cover short distances at speeds up to 35 miles per hour, and this one closed the gap in seconds. John turned toward the building but immediately realized he would never make it to shelter in time. The impact came like a car crash. The bear's forepaws slammed into him with bone-jarring force, knocking him onto the frozen ground. The blow drove the breath from his lungs in a single gasp. Razor-sharp claws, nearly 5 inches long, tore through his heavy winter coat as though it were thin cloth. The bear's immense weight pressed down on his chest and abdomen, making each breath shallow and desperate. Instinct took over. John curled onto his side, trying to protect his vital organs, but the bear's assault was both deliberate and ferocious. It bit and clawed in rapid succession, shaking him with the strength of a creature that could uproot small trees. Pain radiated through his ribs, and he tasted blood, iron and salt, on his tongue. The snow beneath him darkened where it soaked in his blood. The attack lasted less than 2 minutes but felt endless. The world narrowed to the smell of the bear's fur, the hot gusts of its breath, and the crushing weight pinning him down. Then abruptly, a new sound intruded, a deep blaring horn cutting through the chaos. A supply truck driven by Frank Morrison, a local driver familiar with the route, was approaching on the highway. From a distance, Morrison had seen the attack and reacted instantly. He accelerated toward the station, laying on the air horn in a continuous blast that echoed off the surrounding hills. The bear hesitated, momentarily startled by the deafening noise. Morrison did not slow. Steering directly toward the animal, he struck it in the hindquarters at about 25 miles per hour. The impact sent the Grizzly tumbling away from John, who lay motionless in the snow. The bear rose unsteadily, retreating several yards before turning back toward the truck. Its ears flattened and it limped, but its size and power remained daunting. Morrison positioned his vehicle between the bear and John, headlights blazing, horn still sounding in a relentless challenge. For long moments, the predator paced back and forth, its dark eyes fixed on the intruder. Finally, the combination of noise, light, and the looming presence of the truck convinced the bear to withdraw. It turned and vanished into the tree line, snow scattering from its fur. Morrison kept watch until he was certain it would not return. When he reached John, the extent of the injuries was clear: deep lacerations across the chest and abdomen, multiple broken ribs, and heavy blood loss. Morrison radioed for medical help and worked quickly with the supplies he carried, packing wounds and trying to keep John conscious. The nearest hospital was more than 2 hours away by road, so a helicopter evacuation was arranged. After roughly 90 tense minutes, the rescue helicopter arrived, its rotors whipping snow into a swirling white haze. Medics loaded John aboard and flew him to Fairbanks Memorial Hospital, where he underwent emergency surgery for internal bleeding and damaged organs. Recovery would take months, with long stretches of physical therapy and rehabilitation. But wildlife officials later stated that without Morrison's decisive action, John would almost certainly have died at the scene.